Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to talk about, to follow up with some of the other videos we've done, it's going to be about interviewing and red flags to watch out for. So you as the interviewee, you've applied to the place, you've done an initial phone interview, you've been asked to come in person, so you're there to do a personal interview with 1 to 2 to 4 members of that team. If it's for greater up positions, it may be as many as 6 to 8. Typically they tell companies not to do that because there's an intimidation factor for a room to be so heavily weighed on one side of the table. But this, I'm going to include this as the thumbnail, which I always do. But going through this is a very true thing. And I think people need to pay attention to this. And if you could get a scope of work document sent to you before you take the interview or around expectations of the job, that's important that you keep that front of mind so you know what it is that you're agreeing to through this job situation. So here's interview red flags to watch out for, and this is considered a cheat sheet for such. First is we're like a family. That's a comment that just eats me up. I can't stand it when people say that. If you hear this, it's time to walk out. It normally means they will violate all the boundaries and won't care about your feelings or your efforts. That's very true. That might be a bit heavily weighted on one side of that, but just like the interview table I talked about previously, I think that when people start saying stuff, we're like a family, that means that you're going to spend more time with them than your family. Also, that does mean they're going to overly be nosy and nothing's going to be off limits. So watch out for that. You don't want to be in a situation where you're sharing too much with people that you work for. Because when you go to work, those people aren't your friends. We've done videos on that you can go and look up and see. You want to be positive. You want to be inspiring. You want to impact your coworkers, your subordinates, and your superiors in an impactful way daily. You want to be a positive person. You want to be a valued member of the team. But watch out when people are saying we're like a family. That means that it may be to where they're abusive of the time situation. Next is lack of clarity about job expectations. If they can't explain the job responsibilities, reporting structure, the goals, it might show you the company is a mess or they're using the interview process and you to figure this out. So if you get hired for a general type role, you might not learn all of that if it's general labor or something like that, or specific slightly skilled labor around certain things. Skilled laborers typically go in a situation where they know what the job expectation is going to be, all the way up to CEO, CFO, president of the company. Those typically are pretty clear expectations. But in different roles, you can ask for clarity of the role. And if you join a smaller company, it may be that everyone wears multiple hats, and that's fine, but you want to watch out how that goes for us. So you want to ask about the lack of clarity around the job. If they're going in the interview process and now they're talking about offering the position or they're starting to talk about pay and benefits and those type of things, ask about clarity in the role and say, hey, do you have a work role for this, or a rough draft of something that I can look at that is included in the job and the expectation around the job. You want to know the expectations because you'll be measured against them specifically, at least you should be. That's how that should work based on how your performance goes with those expectations. So it's better to make sure you understand those from the jump. Next is looking for someone to hit the ground running. While this might seem like a reasonable expectation, this often means the team's short-staffed and under a lot of pressure. That is a very true statement right there. You might not get much onboarding and support starting out, which can be really tough. I'd agree with that. One of the companies that I worked for previously in my professional career, I was told how great their training program was and how that you will have all this support and all this training. One person told me they went through training like 6 months, all this other stuff. I got 2 days. I got 2 days of training because the company was short-staffed and I was needed very importantly in the area that I was to lead. And so once you get to a certain level, there is an expectation that you should be able to hit the ground running just because you've done all these things for years, and it's basically just changed the company. Most companies have a very similar mission statement and very similar goals. So in some of those roles, that should be a proper expectation, but I think that you need to watch out how that's said, especially if you're just starting a job and you're just starting in the workforce. If you're in the first 10 years of starting a workforce, know that that is something that should be a real red flag when someone says we're looking for somebody to hit the ground running. Next is 5 rounds of multi-hour interviews and assessments. Let me tell you, I did that once. Unless you're applying for the top job, and I agree with that, a CEO, CFO, COO, vice president, president, any of those roles where you are overly engrossed in the overall responsibility of the entire organization, and your decisions may have an impact far greater than your salary and what you actually bring to the table. I can see having multi-hour interviews and assessments, but a lot of times they're using that. This means that they're using that as a training format for their teams of future managers. I did do an interview with one company one time. There was 8 folks interviewing me throughout the day at different times. I interviewed for 6 hours. Okay. By the time the 7th hour rolled around, I got a headache because I was hungry. I stood up and said, you know what? This is not for me, folks. If you can't tell by hour 2 that I'm the one that you want to hire, then I'm not. So I'm going to bounce. I got to go eat something. And it was extremely inappropriate for them not to tell me that it was going to take that long. They still offered me the job, by the way, and offered me $20K more than what I was expecting to begin with, and I didn't take it. So people should be caring about your time, and it should be appropriate to what you're looking for. Future promises. Any job that promises about promotions or pay raises means nothing unless they're smart and written down as part of your job offer. Look up the SMART system on basically assessing people's work. It talks about measured things that can be responded to. And that should be written down as your job expectations and what your goals are for the year. And if you do reach them, that is specifically relevant if it's that. If it's you cover this person's job because they now quit, and if you do very well for this period of time, we'll give you the job. Almost always, that's now what happens. Almost always, you're the boots that are there, so they want you there, and they're hiring someone else, and they want you to cover it in that period of time. Frankly, if they don't get additional pay for that and don't tell you specifically what that pay is, that's always going to be something that's going to draw out your day. And don't take this wrong. I do think there's some benefit to that. So you have the opportunity to show how good you are and then maybe get offered a promotion, etc. But sometimes that goes backwards, and then you'll end up feeling like you were cheapskated or you got stepped on as opposed to appreciated. Okay. So the next red flag for interviews to watch out for is benefits, which are non-benefits. They brag about benefits like training, overtime, free parking, team socials, free uniforms, casual Fridays, flexible working environments, teas and coffees, a pension contribution, and equipment to do your job, the legal annual leave allowance, etc. Today's is just common practice. Most companies have all of that nonsense. If they're not talking about health benefits, days off, PTO you earn first year, year 2, year 3, just like that, those are things I would look out for. Don't be grazed over by the fact we have 2 ping pong tables in the break room. I never understood why anybody would play ping pong at lunch instead of having a lunch, taking some time to do things, catch up on what you need to. But that seems to be what gets people in the door at certain places. The next is the bait and switch. The job you're interviewing for isn't what you thought it was, and it wasn't what you applied for. Take note. They may be desperate for staff and trying to trick you into accepting a lower salary than advertised. I think you should apply to jobs that have a salary range that are commensurate with the skills that you have. If you see a company's doing something like this and you're not interviewing for the company that you applied for, the position specifically that you applied for, listen. If it's a position you're interested in and the pay is relevant and close to what you were expecting, then by all means go ahead with that. But if someone lied to you to get you in the door and you find out something different, walk. There's too many stories I can go into. I'm trying to keep this fairly short, but that is a bad situation with a horrible environment if that's what they're doing. As a practice. Salary range is $30K to $150K or competitive. Huge range for the word competitive says they're not serious about paying fairly. They haven't clearly defined the roles, requirements, of value, and lead the discrimination. I agree with that. I think roles have an expected salary for the role, and that should be 20 grand from top to bottom in that, meaning that the bottom is 20 grand less than the top of that. I think you start in that salary range and you promote up through that salary range. If you start at the upper end of that salary range, that should mean that positionally you're going to promote up in the next 3 years would be my expectation. 3 years, 9, that's kind of what I think is specific. 36 months. It takes you 12 months to figure out what's going on. And then, your second year, you're getting better, finding things you like, and you're targeting those. And the third year, you're getting better. So that's why I think a 3 year is an acceptable expectation for promotion. And last is the interview is too short. 20-minute interview might be a relief, but it could mean that they're desperate to fill the position. Interview process is weak, or they undervalue the importance of ensuring a good fit for you, the team, and them. I think that's important. Interviews should last around 30 to 45 minutes. And maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half. That would be the top end, I would think. But if the interview is too short, or if you apply for this position, they talk like they're very happy that you're coming in and you walk in and there's 45 people sitting there waiting for the same job. I would get up and turn around and walk out of there. They're not serious about hiring people, and the people that they do hire turn and burn very quickly. So I was working for a company one time as a consultant, and I heard the guy who ran the company get up in front of an entire room of new employees and say that they do what's right. And last year they had to hire 500 people so they can meet their goals. And in that room there was only like 90 people. So you're turning over 400 people a year. What on earth are you doing to them? So pay attention to that. Pay attention to what's being said in the interview and what's going on. The job that you're applying for should be there should be a list of expectations and a scope of work. Okay, the scope of work is basically everything you do under that job title. The pay range should be a range that's probably, this rate to this rate, no more than 20K between those two rates. But that's the range that the people are getting paid that are currently doing that role. And based on their performance, they're at different pieces in that pay rate. And also, you want to make sure that if you're listening to those type questions, that the expectation should be that even if you outperform somebody who's been here 10 years, that you're going to get paid the proper rate for your productivity and your activity. You shouldn't be hamstringed because that person's been here 10 years and can't do what you do. So that should be what you're doing. Be good, be aggressive, be energetic, be positive, and then you'll be a great employee on anybody's terms. So I think this is some great call outs on some of these things. Here's the other point. I know you get to the point sometimes where you need a job. I just need a job because I need to pay my bills. That's fine. But when you're doing that, you don't have the opportunity to prep your resumes or prep interview or whatever it is for the job that you should be in, something that would spike your interest and make you happy to go to work. There's that old quote that says, if a man loves what he does, he'll never work a day of his life. So that's a good way to say you want to find the right job. If you have to take a job you don't want for a while, then make sure you're doing it for a specific period of time. Say, I'm going to do this job for 6 months. And if it's not what I expect by month 6, then I'm out. So that means you need to put away 30% of what you're earning each month. So you have 2 more months to live off of after that to find the job that you really want. Target that, get whatever certifications you need, etc. You can do a whole lot of work in 6 months' time to land a job that you really want. So hopefully you like information such as this. We've been doing quite a bit on interviewing lately, so I wanted to throw this out there. There are red flags you should pay attention to in the interview process. And if you get there and you wait more than 30 minutes, walk out the door. I said that in another interview video lately. You want to be treated with respect from day one. If they're not respecting you in the interview, if they don't treat you like a professional and treat you like a human being that they should care about, then you don't want to be there in the first place. If you like information like this, please share, please subscribe, and please throw the like button. I'm Ben. Be good.